It's been about a year since the Dominion War ended. Deep Space Nine is back to normal as a trade hub, guarding the entrance to the Bajoran wormhole under the command of Commander Kira in the absence of emissary Benjamin Sisko. Meanwhile, Miles and Keiko O'Brien have decided to, once again, try to seek out a quiet posting near the Romulan neutral zone where they can retire in peace and raise Molly and Yoshi. This post is fairly barren, but its mountainous terrain carries its beauty all its own, and Keiko has a wonderful time cataloging and cultivating the local flora. Then Q snapped his fingers, teleporting all of the Federation, planets and all, to the galactic southwest unknown regions of the Star Wars galaxy circa the Battle of Endor, which, in this particular timeline, was won by the Galactic Empire, resulting in the destruction of the Rebel Alliance and the deaths of Luke, Leia, Han, and all the other prominent rebels. Welcome back to Fiction Rant. I'm Max, and I'm here to share one of my crossover stories. Also, if you want to support the channel, I've got links to my coffee and merch store in the description. Having maintained relationships with some Starfleet friends, O'Brien hears about it when first contact is made with this highly aggressive empire, which apparently includes members who are capable of wielding what seems to be magic. Oh great, another one of those. Oh well, that's a problem for Starfleet Command. Miles has already fought plenty, and he's done. He's retired. Heck, he was on the front lines of a war with the Cardis, and then another war with the Dominion, and the Deep Space Nine post was supposed to be a quiet one. Oh well. Nothing exciting has ever happened on Murphy 13, and nothing is ever going to. Perfect. Then the Sol Colony runabout detected a energy surge heralding the arrival of an Imperial task force. Miles sighs as he knows what he has to do, and the fight it will cause. Keiko is not compliant when he tells her to get on the runabout and leave, but when he has a security officer physically grab her and drag her to the shuttle as Molly and Yoshi toddle behind, she's able to get to safety. Now Miles can prepare for what is to come without having to worry about his family. This is a tiny colony of only a couple hundred people, not a well-defended citadel or anything. All they have are a bunch of food replicators, a single occupant transporter, and a single holodeck, along with about a dozen antiquated hand phasers. It'll have to do. They won't be able to hold out long against an army, but by God, he's going to make those imps pay in blood for every inch. He's only got hours, and 10 other colonists who actually know the difference between a self-sealing stem bolt and a flux coupler. They'll have to do. Those hours pass in a blur of preparation before a watchman sights some gigantic walkers approaching the mountainous village. They'll be here soon. O'Brien is out of time. Fortunately, he's had the opportunity to give the whole village the Kevin McAllister treatment. A Grand Assault task force of half a dozen AT-AT walkers plus 20 AT-ST walkers lumbers their way towards his Federation colony. They need to capture the colony. There's precious technology that Lord Vader covets, and he will not tolerate failure. The oddities begin when they're about 2 kilometers from the colony. One after the other, the AT-AT walkers stop in their tracks, for no apparent reason. No shots have been fired, so what's happening? Stormtroopers in each of the stopped walkers check the cockpit to find them just totally empty. No blood, no bodies, just vacant cockpits. Back in the colony, the single-occupant transporter has been getting a workout beaming one officer after another to the bottom of a nearby canyon, their uniforms and equipment stripped from them in transit, leaving them just standing around confused in their underwear, dozens of kilometers away from the battlefield. Minutes later, only one AT-ST walker is still mobile, with no sign of anything to actually shoot at, so the officer inside orders all troops to disembark and proceed on foot. He's then beamed away like the others, and the final armored transport wobbles to a stop. Soldiers then begin just disappearing in shimmering clouds, one after another, as the transports begin deploying their troops. The transporter is effective at culling some numbers of troops, but there's hundreds, so the overall impact is minimal at this point. Stopping the walkers was the main job of the transporters. Now for the next layer of defense. The stormtroopers begin rushing the colony on foot, firing wildly at anything that might be a defender. No return fire occurs, however. Instead, the soldiers come across a normal golden retriever dog from Earth. It displays no fear and instead wags its tail and whines in anticipation of making new friends before suddenly shimmering slightly and growing to the size of a building and then charging at the nearest group of soldiers. The stormtroopers panic at the suddenly massive animal and begin firing wildly at it, but their shots just pass straight through with no apparent effect before they're crushed underfoot by the exuberant animal. Miles, watching the chaos on a monitor, chuckles to himself. He'd set up a couple holoprojectors taken from the colony holodeck and modified them so only the paws and jaws would actually interact with anything before just disabling all the safeties. The unrestrained enthusiasm of the Golden Retriever program was all that was needed to turn the now giant holographic animal into a formidable beast ravaging the invading troopers. Unfortunately, after only a couple minutes of playing around, the holoprojectors just overload and burn out. causing the phantom of an incarnate destructive joy to just fade away, leaving dozens of troopers crushed to death, and the rest just totally stunned and baffled and wondering what the heck just happened. It doesn't take long for the remaining troopers to collect themselves, and they begin going door to door, trying to find colonists to round up. Everyone has been evacuated into some nearby caves, which O'Brien is using as a headquarters, so the whole town has been converted into a funhouse of death and destruction. Pairs of troopers enter houses. There's some hissing noise, and then nothing. More troops enter and find no evidence that there were ever any of their comrades in the house before a phaser turret sitting inside the house's food replicator begins opening fire, vaporizing more troopers before anyone realizes what's going on, and they scramble into cover while attempting to return fire. Miles remembers that nasty little trick from Deep Space Nine where the former mining colony used a similar method to control rioters and was more than happy to copy the technique. Officers begin yelling at their troopers to take cover while calling for the orbiting ship for orders. They're ordered to avoid the turrets and that they should avoid destroying them at all costs. Those are part of what Lord Vader sent the whole invasion to capture, so they'll just avoid them. An additional shuttle will be dispatched, carrying ion weapons carried over from the Clone Wars to hopefully disable the devices without damaging them too badly. For now, everyone just has to make do, avoiding traps while also attempting to not damage any of the highly valuable technology that's tempting to kill them. The troopers decide to proceed further into the colony while not entering any houses to avoid further traps. This turns out to be a great idea, and the remainder of the troops are able to get to the city center without any further losses. Unfortunately for the troopers, when they get to the city center, there's just nothing. No resistance, no weapons, nothing. A sergeant approaches a data terminal in the main square and tries tapping out a few commands, but he's just locked out. So he requests a astromech droid be brought up from the AT-ATs, which can hack the console and hopefully get some useful information. There's a nice long reprieve for everyone. None of the colonists take the opportunity to attack the stormtroopers, and the troopers are terrified to enter any buildings, so they just simply sit back and wait, anticipating an attack that just doesn't come. Even the troopers disappearing to the transporter stops for a time. This is because, having run constantly for hours now, the transporter's just broken down and it needs a few hours of TLC from Miles, who unfortunately has his hands full handling literally everything else. The astromech arrives before too long, carrying a satchel of ion grenades, which are distributed among the troopers to be used to disable some of the booby traps. This actually works great. Just staying out of the line of fire, chuck an ion grenade and disable the turret, and then pull the whole turret out of the replicator, place it in the middle of the floor, and blow it up. This helps to preserve the replicator itself, which is the real prize, while eliminating the threat. Meanwhile, the astromech has a bit of trouble actually interfacing with the terminal since it has none of the Imperial standard sockets, but after opening up an access panel and tapping into cables directly, it's able to download some of the terminal's contents. It then sits there and acts as a relay, transmitting all of the data to the Star Destroyer in orbit for analysis. Here's where some good and bad news kicks in for the Imperials. The good news is, there's a lot of data to sift through. The bad news is that, again, watching through a monitor, Miles begins giggling before murmuring, "Good boy, pup." The first sign that something is terribly wrong is when the emergency klaxon begins sounding on the Star Destroyer for no apparent reason. Technicians immediately silence the alarm, but nobody has any idea why it went off in the first place. Then droids begin acting odd, starting with those that are just leaving maintenance and then spreading to every other droid they come in contact with. All of them begin obsessively following crewmen around while either being uncharacteristically proactively helpful or intentionally destructive so that people will stop ignoring them. Absolute chaos quickly takes over the entire ship as every computer and droid begins acting like a neglected child, or perhaps a bored puppy. It turns out that Miles had kept Pup, the sentient program that had infected Deep Space Nine all those years ago, crippling the station for a few days before he managed to quarantine the thing in a sort of digital doghouse. Well, now he was letting Pup play in a whole new funhouse. He'd kept a copy of Pup in a data vault on Deep Space Nine, but felt bad about leaving the little guy cooped up this whole time, and so he brought him along on retirement. He then not had a ton of time to actually play with the little guy himself, but Molly and Yoshi enjoyed playing with it, so seemed to enjoy the new life. Playing with the Imperials was a long overdue bit of exercise for the little guy. Meanwhile, on the ground, the remaining stormtroopers feel a sense of impending dread as their formerly organized and procedural communications with their orbiting ship have been replaced with shrieking comms, random alerts, and garbled communications that sometimes get replaced with blasting music from the holonet. The decision is made to press forward. These glitches are clearly some kind of sabotage perpetrated by the colonists, and their best chance of surviving this whole fiasco is capturing those colonists. The sergeant in charge of the remaining handful of troops reminds everyone to set their weapons for stun, and they disperse into a loose formation while pressing towards the mountains at the far side of the city. Mountains mean caves, and caves probably mean hiding colonists. As the door-to-door approach was a disaster before, everyone bypasses the buildings and heads straight for the mountains. They don't make it too far before a pair of colonists pop up from cover, fire their phasers, killing one trooper and barely missing another before disappearing into the town before the soldiers can return fire. The troopers, now on high alert, slow their progress while trying to check every nook and cranny for potential murderous colonists. At random intervals, one or two colonists pop out, fire once, and disappear. They pop out of doorways, alleys, edges of rooftops, and from behind, and they always take a single shot apiece and then vanish. Miles is a veteran of multiple wars, and multiple colonists are former members of the Maquis and veterans themselves. They know how to fight a superior force and train the other colonists accordingly. It doesn't take long for the entire Imperial ground assault to just be completely wiped out. Victory for the colonists! Then the second wave lands. This time there are no tricks. Just a bunch of Federation citizens with hand phasers versus Imperial armor and a fresh battalion of troops who proceed to recrew all the formerly disabled walkers from the first attack. Miles looks out of the horizon and orders, "Computer, execute program O'Brien 666. The familiar voice of every Federation computer responds in the affirmative before sparks begin flying from every piece of technology in the entire colony, from food replicators to the transporter, followed by the core deleting its entire memory. "Well, we had a good run, didn't we?" he muses. Then he waves to the other defenders, prompting everyone to take one last look at their home before returning, collecting their things, and walking, resolute, into the mountains. Today, they have to abandon their home, but they'll be back. Thank you for watching. I love doing these fanfiction stories, especially when matching Star Trek and Star Wars against each other, and who better to give the Empire the Kevin McAllister treatment than a Starfleet engineer who's got years of experience being tormented by the writers. After all, Miles must suffer. Let me know what you think of this one in the comments. In particular, let me know what you think of Pup's new home. Again, I have a merch store and coffee link in the description if you want to support the channel or just want some neat merch. And until next time, live long and prosper, and may the Force be with you.